Some films are about pain, and some films are about redemption. And then there are films like The Smashing Machine, which just kind of sits in the silence between both. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, gives one of his best performances ever, raw, haunted, and vulnerable. His acting in the hospital, breaking into sobs in front of his friend Mark Coleman, who's played by UFC fighter Ryan Bader, is one of the most impeccable scenes to really show off how good the acting was from Dwayne Johnson. But this isn't just a film review. This is about what happens when art becomes more important than the man, when the trying to portray a story becomes more important than a story. And that was my real issue with this film, because in all essence, it should have been a completely Oscar-worthy film in every facet. The Smashing Machine, directed by Benny Safdie, isn't just another sports biopic, and it's not exactly what we expected. It's edgy. It's a tribute to pain, its power, and the kind of mental decay that happens when a warrior runs out of wars. But beneath the cinematic glow, that 35mm nostalgia, the moody lighting, the perfectly timed silences, the full scores that seem to stretch, and the long takes, and all the money spent and imagining this, these scenes and these settings and this time period, there's a film that seems more obsessed with looking like a masterpiece than actually being one. Because this isn't just a movie about fighting. I mean, it's about Mark Kerr, a man who lived through the fire, who lost more than belts and tournaments, and what the movie leaves out speaks so much more loudly than what it shows. And when they're trying to make this story, it seems like they took the middle part and they left out the beginning and the ending. So let's just start with what works, right? The cinematography is breathtaking. Every frame really does feel very cinematic. It references the time period. It really reenacts what Pride fighting was, and all these different shots, and the fighting itself really resembles that time period and that promotion. But it's dark, it's gritty, it's soaked in sweat. It's shot with reverence for that 90s MMA culture. And then Dwayne Johnson, this is him stripped bare. Gone is the charisma, that larger-than-life grin, like the indestructible physique is still there, but now we have this character who feels like a different person in his skin. Part of it is the prosthetics put onto his forehead, but another piece is really that he changed his entire demeanor, and you can feel that. What's left is this broken man with no mask left to hide behind, and he carries the film, not through the action, but the stillness as well, like through those quiet, almost trembling moments when you can feel the weight of the real Mark Kerr. It presses through the fiction, and especially when it comes to the pain and the drug usage, and the sweetness, the tenderness, the care, the kindness. He's phenomenal, but that's the problem. He's more real than the movie allows him to be, if that makes any sense. You can tell the director and the crew are in love with the film, but it's not the story, it's the idea of the story. Every frame screams cinema. The grain, the color, the pacing, beautiful, but it's also indulgent. The narrative flow suffers because of it. Scenes really do linger too long. Emotions swell way past their meaning, especially with the musical score. It just kind of forces you into this hold, saying you're supposed to feel like this is important. You're supposed to be feeling this emotion, and let me just drown you in it. These moments that could have hit you like a freight train, instead they're just like aesthetic montages. It feels like Benny Safdie, who is an undeniable artist, is like hypnotized by his own aura, and also the aura of cinema itself. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Artists should be allowed to frolic in their own style, their own creativity. But when it comes to making a real story about a real person, if it is fictional and this is what you want to do, by all means, go for it. It makes nothing but sense to really expose your own art and play in the playground, the sandbox that you built for yourself. But if it's a real person, it just seems to be really difficult to kind of relate to, because this is a real person, and now we're just taking the pieces that we want because this is what Hollywood says you're supposed to do, and it really kind of leaves you feeling uncomfortable with the character at the end. By the mood, the nostalgia, the reverence in the process, the truth of Mark Kerr's humanity, it really does get blurred because of this choice. So if we're talking about the actual story though, right? Let's remember who this story is about. Mark Kerr. He wasn't just a smashing machine. He was a world-class wrestler, a pioneer in mixed martial arts, yes. And he was a man who trained alongside the best, but he also had time with Foxcatcher. Yeah, that's the same Foxcatcher that descended into tragedy with the murder of Dave Schultz. Mark endured chaos long before the cage. He lost his mother, a pain that quietly followed him through every fight, every injection, every sleepless night. And years later, after his career, he admitted in a speech that it wasn't an opponent that almost killed him, it was himself. His son once asked him when he was a little kid, "Dad, can you please stop drinking?" And at the moment he even said, he brushed it off. But then that was when he realized this fight isn't for belts. This fight is serious. It's for his life. And he never drank again after that point, up until now. Well, recently he still doesn't drink, as far as, I know. But that is such a powerful story to start from extreme tragedy of losing a friend, especially to cold-blooded murder, of then being stigmatized with that kind of reality and that kind of story, and then losing your mother, who is the one who taught you how to be what you are, and then having to go into these fights and go and play into the story Benny Safdie told. There's so much more weight and so much more power. And then ending the story, instead of it ending in a weird shower scene where he's just kind of like happy he is done with the night, and that Mark Coleman is now depressed, sitting on a couch, staring at his belly with the belt around it. It could have been this insane moment with the child, finally giving him the strength that he needs and the realization to go through the door into actual recovery and to make that decision for not only himself, but for his son. The story could have had that Oscar appeal all the way through, but those pieces were cut out. They weren't even mentioned. For what? That's the man this movie should have shown. The full arc, the tragedy, the surrender, the slow climb back toward hope. Not just this artfully broken fighter who's under these, bright lights. So what's missing isn't cinematic polish, it's honesty. Like, the film takes fragments of Kerr's story, the addiction, the pain, the fall, but not really the context or the true history. Instead of showing the why, it's obsessed over the look. Instead of peeling back the layers of a father, son, addict, and athlete, it filters him through the aesthetic of melancholy beauty, and it really forces into this relationship drama. Like, that was the most important piece of it. It's a gorgeous movie, but it's emotionally incomplete. We see the fighter, we don't see the man. This is where great cinema walks a dangerous line. There's nothing wrong with loving film, with the texture, the lighting, the mood. I mean, that's all part of the craft. But when you start using a real person's life as your color palette, you owe them more than just atmosphere. You owe them honesty. This is a real person. This is a real life. Now, when people see him, the general population that see this man, they just kind of see him as an addict and a failure. Somebody who could have done it but never did it. Instead of this extremely powerful story of coming from absolute horror to full-on recovery. And yeah, that scene where he was outside walking around and parking a cart, you would have seen this gentle giant, this older fighter, and been like, wow, look at that. Like, it wouldn't have just been this kind of awkward, or watching him at Costco. It would have been this, man, like, this guy's been through so much, and look at him like he's happy. That's huge. But, the smashing machine, it wants to be poetic, and sometimes it is, but poetry built on someone's pain needs to bleed truth, not tone. If it were pure fiction, it would be a triumph. Really would. But because it's based on a man still breathing, still living, still recovering, and even just based on a real man, it deserves more respect than just prettiness. So, still, this is Dwayne Johnson's best acting work yet. He's proving what many people doubted, that he can go deep, that he can crumble on screen and still hold your gaze. He honors Kerr through his vulnerability, and maybe, just maybe, his performance is what makes the movie's flaws so visible, because it could have been even greater. And especially when you see the interviews between him and Mark Kerr, and they talk about their careers, and they talk about, what it was like working together, and they talk about their own histories. It's really sad to see that, because man, what if we could have got that in the movie? It would have been so much better. The acting, because the acting was raw, man. The story that surrounds it has to rise to that same level, or it really looks like it's hiding, which is what this film looked like. So Mark Kerr was truly greater than his downfall. It was greater than his demons. And the smashing machine, while beautiful, really forgot to show that greatness. It's a film about a film director who chose not to tell the story.